It is 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm awake. I should be asleep, and my mind is buzzing. I don't want to get into why I'm awake because I tend to go on and on and on. So I'm just going to say that I'm awake because I've got an issue with money, and then I have an issue with food. An issue with money and food. I get my hands on some money and I want to spend it. And I mostly want to spend it on food. Anyway, uh, I want to share some of my feelings about God here. So, this is coming from someone who has not grown very much recently. I had a fairly significant event today where I got angry at someone, and I had a lot of interesting law of attraction, you know, events happen around me at that time. Very, very interesting stuff. Basically, what happened, I was at work and I was driving to pick up a passenger, and this is someone that I know, who I've become friends with, who I've had very excellent conversations with. But he believes the Christian thing, and he would like to give me advice as far as how to deal with my problems. Basically, to cover up the problems with, this, that, and the other thing. Everyone has a solution as to how to cover up their problems, how to ignore their problems rather than deal with them head on. And so I was reluctant to call him, even though he had given me his number. That was the issue, basically, is that he had given me his number and I had not called him. I had not called him. And it's interesting because I'm pretty afraid of meeting with someone who I feel I might have to tell the truth to. But today, he came on my schedule, and um, I was not afraid to. Well, I was a little afraid, but not terribly so. But I was working up the courage, as I was coming to pick him up to talk to him, and a lot of things happened. A lot of different things happened. I don't want to go into all of it, but basically, I was blocking traffic, and someone behind me was beeping at me to move, move, move. Now, in some respects, I can move because uh, in that at that time I could have moved, and I didn't. But in some ways, as a paratransit vehicle, I do have to park in, somewhat not so good spots sometimes, and that is that creates some ire in people sometimes, and it did today. And so I got out of my vehicle and I yelled at the person who was beeping behind me. And then I talked to my friend who was on board, and we talked about that. And I then thought about everything, and in my life, and I thought about. I guess I don't want to go into all of it because, I think it would take me too long to explain, and even if I were to try and explain, I wouldn't do it justice ultimately. You'd have to go through it yourself to see what I'm talking about. But just to kind of give you an idea, I was dealing with a lot of anger, and I dare say a lot of sadness. Now, the problem for me is that I don't know when I'm angry and I don't know when I'm sad. Well, yeah, yeah, no, that's true. So I'll I'll often cry, and I've heard Jesus say that crying can be like it can be just a temper tantrum. So you have to apparently not confuse tears of sadness with tears that come out of rage and anger. So I was making a lot of demands on God. I was saying, God, uh, why why is it so difficult to know the truth? You know, I'm born in this world, and I have a lot of stuff shoved down my throat from very early, and I'm supposed to parse out the truth from the untruth. And how do I know? How do I know what's true? Little old me. I don't have faith in myself that I can determine what is true. How often have I been wrong? How often have I said, "Oh, I think this is what it is," only to find I was completely wrong. I question all the time. I second guess all the time. And if I want to share what I see as the truth with other people, then they chastise for me. They chastise me, and they cut me down, and they lecture to me, and I don't feel like I have the tools to, you know, to survive that. So I was praying about that, and a lot of the prayers were demands. It was like, God, why? You tell me why, God. You tell me why. Even now, I'm connecting to it a little bit, and my eyes are welling up with tears, and it really is a spot of profound soreness within me. I guess I'm really, really upset with God, and yeah, man. Oh, shoot. But yeah, I don't know if it's anger or if it's tears. And the thing about that is, I don't know what the right. I'm not going to, if I had Jesus in front of me, I would ask him, what do you do if you find yourself demanding much of God and getting in a rage with God? Do you just keep on going, or do you kind of try and stop yourself? Like, I was crying a lot today, and I don't know how much of it is sadness or rage. And the thing about it is that the problem that could be is that if you think you're 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 crying because you're feeling your sadness, then you might conclude that you're progressing and you're releasing some of the core pain, because as Jesus would tell you, sadness is the core pain. It's the bottom pain, all right? So once you've released your sadness on a subject, if we were to go through the levels, right? Um, at the very top, you might have stoicism and denial. Underneath that, typically is anger. Underneath that is typically some kind of an addiction that you typically engage in. Underneath that is fear and terror, and underneath that is sadness and grief. So if you get all the way down to your sadness on a given matter, then you've just connected to your true self, or at least you have the opportunity to connect to your true self, because underneath those layers of emotions, and just underneath the layer of emotion which is your grief, that is you. So that's a very interesting thing. And apparently, you can begin to engage yourself, or you can just go back into your old habits. I believe you can potentially, you can, you know, get right back into some bad, practices and feelings and behaviors. So it just because you've released your sadness doesn't mean you're a perfect being now. Now, I'm not going to go into that so much, but all that I'm saying is that it does seem to be somewhat important to know whether you're in a rage or you're sad. And because I was crying, oh boy was I crying. I cried for a solid 30 minutes. I had a real whoa. I mean, it was a big deal for me. And interspersed, I had a lot of demands that I was shouting at God when I was driving around the city, and I'm sure people saw me like, what is wrong with this guy? Holy shit! Oh, he's in a bad way. Wow, look at him. Oh my God, damn, what is going on with him? Because it was kind of obvious. You know, anyone who just cared to see me could see this raging guy. I was actually telling my friend, there's two things that I fear about getting into my anger. The first is how people will look at me, and that's definitely the biggest. And the second is, am I going to hurt myself? I don't want to hurt myself. But you can argue that you're hurting yourself more in the long run by getting angry. Like, one situation I have these days is I'm kind of losing my balance. I think it's somewhat to do with my posture, but my motor skills are actually diminishing, and I keep on hitting things by accident, like, so-called by accident. I keep on missing, like my hand will go into a wall because I don't think there's a wall there or something at that point. And this isn't something I've never really dealt with this. I've never known this to be a problem with myself. It's a brand new issue for me at 34 years of age. So, and I think that is because of some anger that I'm denying. That's why I'm experiencing that. Um, yeah, so, yeah, that's just some things to say about, some events I had today. I heard Jesus say something once about how, he tries not to judge any emotion that's coming through. So I think even if he was angry, he would just try and keep on feeling that anger. And I did try to do that today. So I hope that, I don't know, I'll have more to say when I've figured out this issue, when I've worked through this particular issue. But what I really wanted to share is actually something different. I wanted to share why I have a failure to launch syndrome. I think that's what it's called. It's something that happens to a lot of people these days. I think especially men in this so-called developed country of ours, America. Perhaps many Western countries um, have this particular problem among the men, where they have this failure to launch syndrome, where basically you don't find a lot of motivation in your life. You don't find yourself being driven to make something of yourself. And I think part of the problem is the relationship with the mother. My guess is that's the major issue. But I have to think, if I led my life, if I directed my life like many other people who are successful, if I decided to work hard, if I decided to, put the pedal to the metal, to really go after things, to really put, energy and time into my passion, whether it's my true passion or something that it's just something that I feel very strongly about, and I find out in doing it that it's not my passion, and then I try something else. I still conceivably would have learned something in that process. Why can't I even do that? Why, it doesn't even have to be my, I mean, if, let's say my true passion is counseling people, and yet I go into movie making. Okay, I make a little movie, and then I realize, this really isn't it. There's something about it. I've enjoyed it, but this isn't it. But I've learned something from the process, hopefully. At least that's what I believe theoretically is true. Um, but why? Why can't I just, put myself into things? Why don't I believe? Why am I so lazy? And when I really feel about the answer to that question, what comes up for me is I don't trust that anything good will happen. I don't trust my creator. I don't trust God to be there for me. Forget about money. I mean, money is an issue. Money is definitely an issue as far as my fears. I have a lot of fears around money. Um, I'm sorry. I'm saying that wrong. Don't. It's not that you should forget it, but like, I definitely have a fear about money. Like, conceivably, my understanding is that you attract money into your life. Um, I don't know exactly how it works. Like, this is something I actually am asking God currently. I'm actually, you might say, praying about this. Is God, how do you get money? How do you get resources? What is the true way to get resources? I mean, we grow up with this concept that we need to earn. You give an amount of your energy, your sweat, your perspiration, your work, and in return, you are compensated with money. But there are certain times where people don't adequately compensate you. That's not to say that in the future you won't yield the results of what you've sown. Um, but at that time, it a hurdle might present itself by not being adequately paid, because that happens a lot. People are not adequately paid for many things. So, but that's the question: is it, you put in a certain amount of work and then you retrieve a certain amount in return? Is that how that works? Apparently not. Jesus says it's not about earning. And this really really escapes me. I cannot understand what he is talking about. It's really lost on me. I mean, a part of me that believes that God would, if he's loving, would just create abundance for all of his or her children. Well, clearly, God would simply, you know, provide that abundance, and all that we have to do is, reach out for it, which isn't really work. I mean, even that process is enjoyable. You can, I mean, I imagine, whatever. I imagine a monkey, um, swinging from the trees and, jumping down and handing you a cantaloupe or whatever. I don't know if cantaloupes do they grow on bushes or trees. It's probably a tree, right? But here comes a monkey, and it wants to give you a cantaloupe. How sweet! Oh, thank you so much, monkey. You're so nice. That's what I would say to the monkey. But you know, it's such a wonder and a joy to watch that happening, and then to reach for it and to receive it is also a wonder and a joy. So, that is all part of God's abundance, as far as I see it. And so that isn't, you know, that isn't the that isn't part of the equation that I work and then I earn money. If I work, I will earn money. You know, receiving a gift from a monkey isn't part of that. And we receive gifts all the time that we didn't work for. You know, you could say that our life is a gift that keeps on giving, and we didn't work for it. We were just handed this gift, this reality of our being, which God created for us. So, so anyway, that's definitely an issue I have, but if I